Thank you very much for coming, and I want to let you know that we had our teachers put together their minds together to put a PowerPoint together that has really good information. It's really good. And Jen DePaul has volunteered, come on up Jen, to give this presentation, and it's I'm real thankful for that. And so she's going to present some, and then our AIS teachers are going to present some, and then Mr. Locke, our superintendent, is going to present some. So we have a lot of information for you tonight. So take it away, Jen.
So my name's Jen DePaul, and I've been teaching here since the year 2000. For the first 5 years, I taught special ed, and since then, I've been teaching third grade. So the first thing I want to let you know is that the New York State tests in ELA and math are on April 11th and 12th, and then on May 1st and 2nd. Students who are late or absent on these days are taking the tests on dates after. So for ELA, the dates are April 13th, 16th through 18th, and then math is May 4th through 9th. In fourth grade, there's a science test as well. And so the dates for that are May 23rd to 25th and June 4th. Now June 4th is a written test, but May 23rd to the 25th is a lab practical, where students go by class. They only go in for one period. They have 3 experiments to do. The fourth grade teachers said they really enjoy it. They enjoy preparing for it. They enjoy demonstrating their skills. It takes them about 15 minutes for each experiment, and that's the end of their New York State test for science. So even though it looks like it's for more than a day, it really isn't. It's only for 45 minutes. So my first year teaching third grade was the first year ever that third graders got to take the New York State tests. And before that, 4th through 8th took them. And this was the year that they decided that the third graders were going to take them as well. So I got to thinking, how am I going to tell these kids that they're going to take the New York State test? So I stood in front of them, and I decided I was going to tell them what's on the test and what it looks like. And I said, and you are not going to believe it, for the first time in the history of New York State, you are the first third graders ever to get to take the test. And they all cheered. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go with that from now on. I'm going to let them know, whether it's taking a test or doing something else, that they get to take the test. Since then, every year, I start my talk with the kids. It's brand new to kids in third grade, and they hear things from brothers and sisters and cousins. And so I introduce it to them like that. You get to do this. And they still cheer. And so they're okay with it. These are some of the things I tell my third graders. You get to take the tests. We get to sit in rows. Now, when I was a kid, we always sat in rows, but kids don't sit in rows anymore. They sit in collaborative groups. They sit in nice little U shapes where we all come in the middle. And no, you put them in rows, they're so happy. They want to stay in rows for the rest of the year. So this is a highlight. In fact, in my class, I've just recently transitioned to rows that are connected for the first time ever. And then we'll split apart. So they're getting used to that feel. They love it. Everyone in the state of New York in third grade is taking the same tests on the same days, reading the same passages, answering the same questions, and solving the same problems. Whether you have a cousin or a friend in New York City or in Buffalo, they're all taking the same exact test, and they think that's pretty cool. Cassavant, Freeville, sometimes it's just as far as Cassavant and Freeville, but they're excited that everyone's doing the same for 4th. Everybody in 4th is taking the same test, and 5th, and so on. You get to fill in a bubble sheet. This is really fun. It does take some instruction. You can't imagine what can happen to a bubble sheet when you're not instructed correctly. So we do practice this. They love it. They look for patterns. We encourage them not to look for patterns, but they find them anyhow. You get to read texts, passages, poems, stories, articles. Sometimes there's recipes, there's directions, all different kinds of passages that are especially chosen for this test. And I tell them, imagine someone, or a group of people, they're planning the right stories and passages for third graders everywhere. So they must be really good. They're going to be really interesting. That gets them a little bit more excited about it. So when they go to take the test on the first day, they know that I can't wait to open it up because I don't see it ahead of time either. So as soon as they get to start taking it, I get to look at what the passages are. And every teacher here I know does that. That we're so excited to see, is it going to be about an animal? Is it going to be about a famous person? Is it going to be about a sport? Is it going to be about something we already learned about? We all kind of get excited about it. I also explained to them how long the test is. They've heard from brothers and sisters that it takes all day and you sit for 3 weeks and that's how long it takes. And no, they're surprised to find out how long it really does take. I give them the breakdown of the test, what happens on day 1, what happens on day 2 in both math and ELA, just so that they're more comfortable with it. I interviewed my class. So I said to them, I'm going to be talking to a bunch of parents. Can you tell me what you want them to know about taking these tests? And these are the things they really said. Don't be worried, we aren't going to be sitting all day not learning anything. It's just like any other test. It's easy for us because we've been learning. It's going to help us, and it helps our teachers know what we haven't learned yet. Then I asked them how they felt about it. Really excited because it will be fun. Really excited because if I don't know some words, it will be like a challenge to figure them out. Excited because I want to figure out how much I've learned so far. Happy because the only time I really pay attention is when I'm taking a test. Nervous because this is new to me. Excited because we get to read new stories and other types of passages. Excited because we will get to learn from some of the passages. These are some of the changes that have happened over the years. Starting last year, for the first time ever, students were given as much time as they needed. It's changed throughout the years. When I first started giving the New York State test, the students were timed on each passage. And so they started, and they would get like 8 minutes. It would be a poem, they would have 8 minutes, they would read the poem, answer the questions, and they couldn't go any further. And then it switched to, and that went on for a few years. That was a bit disruptive. They couldn't go at their own pace. Although in third grade, they're just learning how to pace themselves. So it wasn't totally a bad thing, but that's how we did it. Then it switched to you had this much time for the whole thing. Now they're given as much time as they need. That's one of the changes. Another change is last year the number of test questions were reduced. In ELA, 1 passage was taken out, and then the questions that would go with that. And in math, there were 4 less multiple choice questions. Now this year, the number of testing days has been changed from 3 for ELA and 3 for math to 2. Now there's only 2 days in ELA and 2 days in math. That's a pretty big change. And then this is the breakdown. So if you have a third grade student, how many people are here from third grade? So we do have some brand new test takers. Day 1, they're going to read 4 passages. There's probably going to be a fiction, a nonfiction, a poem, and then probably another nonfiction. I'm just guessing, but that's. And then they have 24 multiple choice questions, so probably 6 questions with each passage. On day 2, they read 3 passages. They answer 6 short response questions, which is kind of like what we call a 2-point question. They know how to answer a question based on a 2-point rubric. And then 1 extended, which is like a paragraph. We call it a 4-point question. In math, on day 1, they have 25 multiple choice questions. They learn how to do all their work in their booklet and then transfer it over to the bubble sheet. But those are just multiple choice. On day 2, they have 8 multiple choice, and then 6 short response, and then 1 extended response. Kind of like if you notice on your child's homework, they have to explain their thinking. Those are the kinds of things they're doing on those.
Could you leave that up for just 1 more second?
I can.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think I'm more nervous for this test than she is, really.
Oh, she'll be fine. Do we have any fourth grade? Are we mostly third grade parents? Fourth. Fourth is very similar. I think fourth is actually identical to this. So I can go through it quickly because I just did.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So fourth, 4 reading, 24 multiple choice, 3, 6. That's the same. Math. There's 30 multiple choice for math in third grade. It wasn't. Was it 30? It was 25. Yeah. And then 8 multiple choice, 6 short response, and 1 extended. Does anyone want me to leave that up longer? Fourth grade science. I told you about that already. They have 3 stations for the performance. It takes about 15 minutes for each station. For the written, they have 30 multiple choice and 15 short response. And the fourth grade teacher said the short response aren't like our 2-point rubric questions. Some of them are just fill in the blank questions. So it's not equivalent to the short response in ELA. Fifth grade, a little bit more. 5 reading passages, 35 multiple choice. 3 reading passages, 6 short response, 1 extended. That's the same. And then 30 multiple choice in math on day 1, and 8 multiple choice, 6 and 1. That's the same too. Last year, this is what we were told, that students will be provided as much time as necessary to complete each test session. And then this slide tells you a little bit about how long they say on average it takes students to complete. So in third grade through fourth grade, it takes about 60 to 70 minutes on the ELA. Now, that's about how much time we spend on ELA each day. Math, it takes, oh, this is fifth, this is still ELA, about 80 to 90, which is about how much time they spend on it. And I don't know about other teachers, but on the days that we take the New York State ELA test, we don't do ELA, that's ELA. And then we'll do math that day. On the days that we take math, we don't do math. It's that test and then that's it. And then math, this gives the times. Grade 3, about 60 minutes. Grade 4, a little bit more. Grade 5, a little bit more. But again, it's about the same amount of time they spend on math every day. Yes?
So for those kids who need more time,
Oh.
when do they utilize time? Because I know last year my daughter in 4th grade ended up needing more time, and she did it during her recess, so she was none too pleased about missing recess.
She wanted more time.
Well, she did. She used more time, but it came from her recess time. It was upsetting. So I believe the next time she took a test, she chose not to use extra time because she wanted her recess.
I think it depends on the grade level and what they have after. We don't have recess till noon. So if we start the test at 9, there's a good chance people will be done. I don't think they want kids to be just interrupted in the middle of the testing. So I think maybe we can answer that.
And also too, I think as teachers who, they know their kids have been sitting for a long time, and if they've missed recess, are likely going to give them a recess time that they just get them out and moving, because kids need to get out and move.
And maybe that's something our administrators can make sure happens.
Yeah.
If a child misses recess, we will find a free time, even though she probably won't be with all of her friends.
Yeah.
She'll get a time to kind of.
We're looking at that with scheduling for this year as far as how that's going to be accomplished, because that came up last year with it being its first untimed year, and it was one of those unanticipated consequences. So we took note of that for last year. So when we're scheduling how it's going to lay out, with depending on when the specials are and so forth and so on, we're going to try and make sure that those times are there.
Thank
And
you.
we don't want a kid to just go through and, because I want recess. So we don't want to defeat our purpose.
And at some point, I know last year was the first year, so it was tricky how we were going to work it. And we reached a point in the testing where almost everyone was done, but maybe there were 1 or 2 students. So the administrators came around, and at some point they picked up those students and took them to a quiet place, because after sitting for an hour and a half, some students who they're done, and that's about as long as they're going to sit to wait for other students to be done. And that wasn't a problem. Last year for ELA, I remember I had 2 students who left to finish it, and they were fine with it. They were working diligently, and they were happy to go finish it somewhere else. So I think that depends on the grade level, and that just depends on that day and how it works. Test accommodations, students who have IEPs or 504s, if they have test accommodations in place already, they will receive those same accommodations on the day of the test. We make every effort to have students go with somebody they are familiar with, so it doesn't feel weird for them. Why? The tests help us to measure how well students are mastering the learning standards that guide classroom instruction. And the tests help to ensure that students are on track to graduate from high school with the critical thinking, problem solving, and reasoning skills needed for success in today's world. How we use the test results. Results from the test help to identify achievement gaps among different student populations. Without widespread participation in the New York State test, it's more difficult for school and district leaders to recognize these gaps and provide support and resources to the students who need them. So your students take at the end of every math module an assessment, and in the middle of every math module. In the middle of every ELA unit, they take an assessment, and at the end they take an assessment. But those aren't cumulative. Right now in my class, we're studying fractions. They're going to take a mid-module assessment on fractions and an end-of-module assessment on fractions. But we don't give any finals, so we don't know cumulatively how students are doing. These help us a little bit more with that. A group of teachers from 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade met separately and looked at the gaps from last year's test from our school compared to other schools in the area. And we were able to see some of the places where we fell short on. For example, in 3rd grade, we had about 4 areas, which isn't very much at all. One of the areas was estimating to the nearest 10 and 100. We only cover that in 3rd grade for a short period of time, but now we know when we do cover it, we need to be a little bit more careful about making sure students can estimate to the nearest 10 or 100. Maybe we change up the homework at some point just to reinforce some of those skills. So 4th grade teachers did the same thing in both ELA and in math. They looked at the gaps and just honed in on those places that we needed to fix. Right now I'm going to have Dana and Andrea and Kathy come up. They're going to talk a little bit about AIS.
Hi, I'm Dana Bell. I'm a primary reading teacher.
I'm Andrea Every-Rousseau. I'm the reading department chair, and I work on the intermediate side reading support.
And my name is Kathy Poole, and I'm a math AIS teacher.
All right, so just a little background in case you're not familiar that the Dryden schools, we use multiple measures to decide if students are at risk for not meeting the grade level standards. And so these assessments are done at different times throughout the year, and it's just another way for us to gather information to make sure we're providing enough support and help for kids who need it in order to reach the grade level standards. And so the test, the reason we're up here to talk about this is because the results of the test are just one thing that we look at to see if a student is in need of this type of support. Students tend to need to have 50% of the available criteria, which includes the DRA2, which is an acronym for the Developmental Reading Assessment. It's our school-wide assessment that covers their fluency, how well they're able to read out loud, types of mistakes they might make, or if they're able to just read without mistakes and with good expression. And it checks their comprehension, how well they're able to talk about what they've read, demonstrated understanding of what they read. As they get older, then it switches over to being able to write answers to questions about what they've read. And then there's STAR testing, which is a computerized reading assessment, which just is a different way to approach them being able to share what they understood about the passages that we read. And then there's also a section for teacher referral, which has to do with assessments that are done within the classroom setting. How well are they performing on classroom activities and assessments? And then the New York State test.
So our reason to highlight this is because New York State changed it a few years ago. You used to basically, if you got a 1 or a 2 on the test, you would automatically be enrolled in AIS. So they did give the ability for schools to look at multiple measures to where it's not a pass or fail and you're in AIS now. So we are able to, as a district, look at many multiple measures of how your students are doing.
Math.
Can you click for me? So many of the things that I have to say to you about math AIS, you've just heard, because it's very, very similar. Again, if your child takes the math test and they don't do well, it doesn't mean that they're automatically going to get math AIS services. It's just one piece of the puzzle that we look at to determine if a child needs services. The same is true if they take the test and they do really well. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't necessarily get AIS because there are multiple measures. So just like for ELA, there's 4 different measures that we use for children in grades 4 and 5. I can't say that for 3rd graders because 3rd graders haven't taken the test yet. So we don't have a New York State test score for 3rd graders. For 3rd graders, those of you who have children in 3rd grade this year, we have the 3 measures that are up here. The one that is different than ELA is our Dryden Fluency Assessment. And that's basic fact assessment. Those are time tests. And that gives us one picture of a part of math learning for children. We also use STAR testing, which you heard about in ELA. That's the computerized assessment. That gives us another picture of how they're doing in math. We also have teacher referrals that we use as a piece of the criteria. And then, like I said, in 4th and 5th grade, when we have the results of New York State testing, that's our 4th piece of the puzzle. And children qualify to get math AIS services if they are at district set cut points in 50% of the criteria that's available. We wanted to take just a minute at this point to see if there were questions about AIS and how that relates to New York State testing.
Actually, I have 2 parts. So for the math section, when do you guys do the Dryden Fluency assessments?
That's a great question. They're given multiple times throughout the year. We have data meetings where we all meet together and look at results, and that happens 3 times a year, in the early fall, in the winter, and then again in the spring. That's not the only time those assessments are given, though. Those are the times that we use it for our AIS data meetings. Those assessments are also given right before report card time also, because those are used for report card grading also.
And depending on the teacher, we're learning our multiplication facts in 3rd grade, and so we give multiplication. The fluency is more of a combined assessment, but right now, like in my class, we're working on our 3s, and so this Friday they have a 3s quiz. That's not really, it's a fluency quiz,
Right.
but so that's a little bit different. So in 3rd grade, students seem to have more fluency because they're practicing those multiplication facts.
Okay. And then my next question was, so my daughter was actually just enrolled in the reading part of AIS, so is she going to be able to be pulled out of her classroom for the ELA portion? She said she was going to reading group and all of that.
For the ELA portion of the test itself.
Yes.
No, she will take that in her classroom.
In the classroom,
So the
okay.
AIS that she's receiving now is additional reading support that she's receiving on top of classroom instruction.
Okay, so
Um,
it's just a little bit extra.
Yeah, so that's the additional help. It will not do anything for testing accommodation.
Okay,
So she will take her test in her classroom.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anything else specific to AIS? If something comes up, we can always answer it.
I guess I have one quick question, sorry. Sorry, you were almost sitting, I know.
We were so close.
The transition 5th to 6th grade, in the past, there's been a pretty significant lag in that time to get that final 4th piece of data. So often there's a question of, will there be AIS for those going into middle school, not answered until school starts. Is that something that, obviously I understand if they're already meet the other 3 out of the 4, then they're probably going to be, but if they're kind of on that edge, where are we, how are we evaluating them, and how are we making sure that that's in place before they transition up?
So I'm not very familiar with the middle school AIS criteria.
Well, I guess that's my question, is kind of how are the elementary then helping to, do you meet with the middle school
Fifth
to
grade
then
teacher,
get
yeah.
those?
Yeah, the 5th grade teachers and 5th grade reading teachers that meet specifically with that grade level do have transitional team meetings with the 6th grade teachers. And included in that will be the STAR testing, it will be the DRA2 level, it will be a teacher referral saying, you know, the student may need a little extra help in middle school, or the student may not, based on that. And then the 4th data piece, when it comes in, will then be looked at as well. I know the middle school is in the middle of changing some of their protocol and some of what's happening, so I'm not sure 100% what it will look like next year. But just kind of speaking, so.
There was, we had a question about how, and this is related to your question, but not answering your question, how 5th grade, can they still go in and, despite if they didn't take the New York State test, what criteria for taking an honors course? And there's going to be criteria. That's only one of the criteria.
Given the reduction in the length of the assessments to only 2 days, do we expect a quicker turnaround from the state? Is there any anticipation of that? To make that data usable?
One could hope.
That would be nice. It would be helpful.
I can answer that. The assessment results as far as an item analysis is usually available by June, but in terms of scaling the scores and whether you're a level 1, 2, 3, or 4, we get that in August. And that's been pretty consistent for the last few years. So.
How do we prepare our students for this? So the 3rd grade test is not a 3rd grade test. It's a K3 test. The 4th grade test is not a 4th grade test. It's a K4 test. And the 5th grade test, same thing. So the students here are starting right away at kindergarten. Now they're not starting practicing bubbling sheets and things like that, but they're starting. Our curriculum here is aligned to the standards, and so everything they're doing from kindergarten all the way up, they're doing to prepare for this. They're ready. They're used to getting checked in what they're doing. I know, I could have asked my kids this, I didn't ask them, but if I did, I know what they would have said. If you ask them, why do they take tests? They say, well, to find out, they themselves say, to find out what I know, and to find out what I still need to learn, not what I don't know. They say what I still need to learn. The most important thing, their favorite thing, because they occasionally like to blame me, is to find out what you still need to teach better. So I let them know that part of the test, any test we give, is to find out what I maybe didn't do that well. How can I improve? If everyone got something wrong, I messed up. So they get that sense when they take a test. When I was younger and we took tests, I wonder how I would have answered that question. But kids nowadays, we talk to them so much about so many different things. They really understand the reasoning behind a lot of the things that we do. So, if that makes you feel any better. What can you do to help? Be positive. They're always listening to you. Get a good night's sleep. The kids too, make sure they get a good night's sleep. Be on time for school, because if they're late, they're going to have to take the test at another time. Eat breakfast. And this year, the district has decided to offer every student on the day of testing a free breakfast on both days in ELA, both days in math. Science may happen as well. And so information will be coming home about that when it gets closer to the test, whether you want your child to eat at home and not have the breakfast, or you want your child to have the breakfast. So that will be happening soon. And if you want more information, you can always go to Engage New York. It has a lot of information for parents. It has past tests. The last year's test, there's released questions. The year before's test, there's released questions. You can check them out at home. There's a lot of frequently asked questions. We have some handouts that came right from there. And of course, ask your child's teacher, or any one of us here. There's several teachers here. I'm always available to contact if you have a question, but your child's teacher can probably answer most of the questions you have, and if they can't, they will go and get the answer for you. So, do we want to ask any questions right now? We had a few.
We're going to have Mr. Locke come
Mr.
up,
Locke
and then
is going to come
we'll
up.
have questions afterwards.
All right.